So, and then Nixon's president when they land on the moon. And there's in his library in Yorba Linda, California, where he was born and raised, and the little house that he was born in is there at the library. There's a phone, which is the phone that he talked to the moon on. It's the White House. They took the White House phone that he made. It's just a fucking beige phone with a big white button and a big red hold button. I don't know if he put them on hold, but he, talked to, well, it's just wonderful that you're up there.
You're up on the moon.
You're up there and Jack is dead. Fuck him. And
nothing could stop me now.
Yeah, no. So he was president when that happened, and so 68 turns into the 72, and now the country's really fucking changing. Everything's in color now. The TV's in color. Everything's, hippies are starting to get old.
Yeah, they're starting to wash out a little.
Yes.
What's sadder than that?
Two things happened to the hippies. First of all, they killed a bunch of them. They killed a bunch of their leaders. But they also got the drugs started to take a bad effect. They went from mind liberating pot to fucking heroin and cocaine, which are dark drugs. They became dark
evil
high.
Hippies.
Yes, and then some of them grew up and had families and wanted to be rich. So, and there's another thing you can find on YouTube that's great are the debates between Abby Hoffman and Rubin. He was Jane Fonda's husband, and he was a congressman eventually. But he was one of the Jerry Rubin, I think his name is. He was one of the yippies. He's one of the. He was a wicked radical, and he used to be one of those guys. We're not taking his shit anymore, and the president come here and kiss my fucking ass. Yeah. And Abby Hoffman had the best.
Became a congressman.
Yes, Abby Hoffman was Abby Hoffman said the N-word constantly during speeches because he would just be with a bullhorn and talking about "fuck you," and he was like really inappropriate, and he was really a lit up nut. Abby Hoffman. Him and Jerry Rubin were like the East Coast, West Coast hippies. Later, Jerry Rubin became a huge capitalist. He became a yuppie. That's where the term yuppie came from. And the two of them debated. They traveled together to different universities, and they would debate their generation's new predicaments of, do we keep the fight going of trying to get out of wars and trying to be Democrats and trying to liberate this country? And the other ones were like, we got to grow up, and we got to. And what Rubin was saying was, we need a candidate. We need to win an election. So we need to go to the center, and we need to talk to big business and small business, and we need to talk about being a practical, because that's the liberal dream. And this became Clinton. This is where Clinton came from from the hippies saying, okay, we're not going to just protest our whole lives and be these losers. At one point, they had a huge amount of power.
Yeah.
In Vietnam, they had a lot of power. They held this vigil around the Lincoln Memorial. And I mean, think of the time, because MLK gave this speech there and they fucking shot the guy. And I remember being at the Lincoln Memorial with my kids and saying that this spot, the steps of the Lincoln Memorial, is it's a place you can really understand American history from. Because you look that way, you see Washington, and that was the creation of our country, right? And then you see the Capitol, which was the growth of this legislator. But there is Washington, which was the creation of the country and revolution. And then there was Lincoln, who kept it together as a union, who that was the second step. Yeah, we're our own country, but also, even if millions die, we need to be a union. Okay, that's what Lincoln did. And then who stood here and made this place even important for a new generation? MLK stood there, and there was a sea of people, and he had to fight for, inside of that union that Lincoln preserved, that Washington started. He said, we have to fight for our rights in here. He was the first one to say there's a civil way to fight to push for our rights legally and through quiet, through nonviolent resistance. So this is a huge place.
It's firing me up, dude.
Right? This country has
cool,
an
man.
incredibly romantic history. And there's another way to look at all of this, apparently, but this is the way that I was taught it, and I see it again as a story. So, but then after he'd been shot, and all that became rubble, like that, all that was pushed aside, and now that we're in a fucking melee war, Nixon's president. It feels like forever. It just feels like Nixon's never not going to be president. He was a psychotic. He's taking drugs. He's drinking a lot. He was so racist. He was like, there's tapes of him saying about Italians. He's like, I don't like Italians. They smell different. He says that on tape. And
he was right.
Well, depends on if they've been cooking. But so Nixon. So the mall and the memorial is just besieged by strung out hippies, students, and veterans. Veterans who came home from the war and hate the war now and have Ron Kovic and all these guys in wheelchairs going, what the fuck did I do this for?
Yeah.
This certainly isn't World War II. What are we winning here? When is this war going to end? And it was just a mess. And in the middle of all that, in the middle of the night one night, Nixon got in his limo and drove into the middle of that. He went to the Lincoln Memorial. Do you know this?
No.
There's footage of this too. He was looking out his window. You fucking kids. The fuck did they know? But it was breaking his heart. Yeah. Because even though he had the hard hats, and even though he had the silent majority, just like now, nobody wants the silent majority. People want the cool people to like them. Twitter is like 39 people and 60,000 bots. It's very few people. It's a bunch of kids that are fighting and saying this extremist shit. And the huge, vast amount of the liberal part of this country is not into any of that. But nobody's satisfied with just knowing that the average person gets it, and that when you really deal with human beings on a real level, they're going to do the right thing. I believe that. I have a lot of confidence in human and American, just the way we are as people. But these folks that yell and scream, they really get people want them to like them. And so Nixon, even though he was winning by a landslide everywhere, he's looking out that window and he's looking at those kids, because it's your kids. It's like if everybody likes you, but your kids think you're a piece of shit, it just eats at you. It just destroys you. And so he got in the limousine, and he drove into the middle of the protesters, and he got out and he talked to them. And there's just this footage of him talking. He's in his stupid suit. And they're like, man, you don't get, man, you're just you're like an imperialist piece of shit, man. And he's like, well, I understand your point, but I mean, do you just think we just give up? I mean, what happened to this country? And they talked. They really talked. I don't know what it did to him, but he did get us out of that war.
You ever see?
Nixon did pull us out of that war. Now, he did it in a way that is horrible, which is that he bombed Cambodia. And this is the story that I heard, is that he had this very specific strategy, which was he starts bombing Cambodia, which came out of nowhere. It was like, what? And then he let it be.
But wasn't Cambodia was where they had the Ho Chi Minh Trail, right?
I don't know.
I think they knew they could use Cambodia. Like, they were using these trails in other countries.
Right, but still, it was a country we had no right. Yeah. We were not at war with Cambodia, but we were bombing Cambodia as if it would be like if people were escaping to Canada and we were like, so fuck it. Or if Canadians were at war and some of them escaped into the States, and whatever the other country was just started bombing fucking Wisconsin. Like, dude, you can't just do that. And so many people were getting killed. And Nixon, what he did is he let it be leaked that no one could get in touch with him, like that his aides were trying to tell him to stop bombing, and that he cut off communication, and was that he wanted them to think he'd gone cuckoo. And that's how they got the Vietnamese to the table and got a peace. It wasn't a good peace. They left.
Oh, he faked that he was nuts?
That's what I heard.
That's good.
I don't know.
Well, that's history. That's how you hear history.
Google, I don't know.
But it's another thing about the Vietnam. I feel like Eisenhower, when he left, was like the military-industrial complex. That was Vietnam.
Yes.
That was And that got us to now. I was like, oh, now we pulled out of Afghanistan. Where are these guys going to get their money?
Mm-hmm.
Hey, $33 billion to Ukraine. Like,
well,
it's just
exactly.
nonstop.
Well, that's
it's
the
nonstop.
other side. You have your like political left that has more power than they do people, right?
Yeah.
Because they're captivating people's like anxiety. But then on the other right, you have all these people that are doing fucked up things.
Yeah.
That also are untouchables. And there are only a few people with just a little bit of interest, a little bit of money, and so they're making all this crazy stuff happen.
That's jumping ahead.
I don't know much about it, but anyway. But so Nixon.
But it seems to me if you speak out against it, you get shot in the head or Watergated.
Yes.
Which is kind of what's happened. I could be wrong.
Yes.
That seems to be the underlying theme. Like he got out of that war and then
they
couldn't shoot him in the head.
I don't believe in conspiracies, but what I do believe is that there's a shift in the hive mind of America, so that if certain people that get in a position where they're in trouble, like Nixon did, the next person he goes to is going to be like, nah, man. Like, you don't know where it's going to come from.
Yeah.
Like the story I heard about Caligula. Caligula was a terrible leader who was an absolute leader because everybody behind him had built the emperorship of Rome into a huge thing. You couldn't touch the emperor. He was like a god.
Yeah.
And Caligula made himself a god.
And then a crazy guy took.
He was insane. Caligula was insane. And
did he have his horse in Senate, or was that
he
Nero?
made his horse in Senate?
That's pretty sick.
And Caligula, one of the emperor's duties each day is to give the watchword to the head of the army, and the watchword is like the code word for the whole Roman army for the next week or whatever it is. So somebody asks him, "What do you want to be the code today?" And it was the head of the army, this guy who was like his bodyguard, and he thought it was funny, so he'd say, "Give us a kiss." He wanted everybody to have to say, "Give us a kiss," and so that all the Roman guards would have to say to each other, "Give me a kiss," in order to like pass one guard to the next. And it was that guy that killed him.
Yeah, that guard.
It was that guard who was just like, fucking shivved him
just,
like fucking American meat.
It is funny when those guys do get killed.
Yeah.
Anytime a dictator gets killed, I mean, it's sad. It's always sad to watch. Like Gaddafi was sad.
It was really sad.
Gaddafi was sad.
Yeah, he's just with the blood.
Yeah.
And
Saddam people
is hanging.
Screaming.
Some guys were screaming. He looks at one of them and he goes, "Shut up." It's true. You see him come in and he's grumpy. He's like, this is such bullshit. He's not like, oh, that's what everyone's fantasy is. He's like, oh, I wish I had.
Yeah.
But he just comes in and some guy screams and he goes, "Shut up."
Just a room of dudes yelling.
Kick the bench away and he hung.
He must have been so pissed on 9/11.
Yeah.
He probably was watching TV just like, oh,
you guys, that's going to be me. Okay. So,
Nixon. I don't know shit about Ford or Carter.
Okay. So Nixon resigns. I will resign the presidency.
So wait, I don't even understand Watergate.
So Watergate was it started as a very simple thing, which was there's some guys Nixon had a committee, the committee to reelect the president, which is CREEP. CREEP was literally their acronym. So CREEP sent some burglars to the Democratic National Committee's office, which was in Watergate Hotel. Watergate Hotel is in like a complex of office buildings. And they stole some papers from there. And this kind of shit was happening a lot. But Nixon was on drugs, paranoid, had a list of enemies. He just went. His thing came apart. Is really what happened.
Yeah.
These guys took some papers. It wasn't a big deal, but he immediately tried to control it because he was like, we're quashing this, we're killing this, right?
Yeah.
And somebody said, well, we got this guy. If he talks, we're all fucked. And Nixon says, what does he want? And they have them on tape. Somebody says he'll do it for $1 million, and he says, can we get the $1 million? And it's Nixon saying that was like the smoking gun. Was like, we'll give him the $1 million if he wants it.
We'll give him $1 million. What are you talking about?
If you're president, you can't say that out loud.
Yeah.
It's crazy. But he had too much. He wasn't delegating enough, and so one by one, the investigative reporters at the time were really diligent, and they turned against a lot of pressure. They turned guy after guy after guy down until finally they got the guys close to him, And he knew
Is the
that-
guy they were going to pay, is that Deep Throat?
Yes.
That's the...
Well, no. Or
is that just the
Deep Throat is
whistleblower?
a guy who was in the system, who just who saw everything that was going on
Okay.
and was leaking it. It's just one of the dumb burglars, one of the guys. And there was this guy, G. Gordon Liddy, involved, who was a weird CIA guy who used to put his finger over a candle and burn it, and fucking
Like,
psycho.
isn't that cool?
Yeah.
It's like
Liddy is a great guy to look up. G. Gordon Liddy. So Nixon knew that if they impeached him, they had the votes. That's another time where things were. I want to go back it because there's a guy I remembered now, which is one of my not countrymen, but citymen from Boston is Tip O'Neill. Tip O'Neill was the Speaker of the House for many, many years. And he was Speaker, I think, during Nixon, but he was during Kennedy. So he was a Boston politician, and so was Kennedy. And there's just going to tell you this one story about Tip O'Neill.
No.
So Tip was worked with Kennedy in Boston for years, and there was some shifty guy named Patty O'Brien or something, some shifty Irishman who would, every time they had like a big banquet or something, he'd always get in there and he'd be like, "Hey, how you doing, Tip?" And he's like, "How does Patty O'Brien get in everything?" And he was at Kennedy's inaugural, Tip, and he was Speaker of the House, so he was really close to the front.
Yeah.
But Patty O'Brien had better seats than him, and he saw Kennedy walking up to take his speech, and Patty threw his hand up and he saw Kennedy look at him.
How the fuck are you here?
And like a year later, he was at some big event for Kennedy, and they were showing footage from him and not taking the oath of office. And he asked Kennedy, "What were you thinking when you were becoming the president?" And he said, "I got to be honest with you, I was thinking, how the hell did Patty O'Brien get those seats?"
That's awesome.
Tip O'Neill wrote a book called Man of the House that's fucking so entertaining because it covers all these guys that he served with. Okay, Nixon. So he's
out.
Gerald Ford is a really weird president.
Yeah.
Because he didn't want to be president.
He was
ever.
just Nixon's vice president.
He wasn't even just Nixon's vice president. He was the Senate Majority Leader.
Oh.
He was just a senator from Michigan with no interest in being a fucking
who was
president.
Nixon's VP?
Spiral Agnew.
And he got ousted.
He
with
got
him?
thrown out because he was a fucking crook.
Yeah, he was with him.
They got rid of Agnew and they're like, just get Ford. I think Ford just filled in. He was like, what? I'm vice president? I don't want to be fucking
That
vice
came
president.
out of nowhere, too.
And yes, out of nowhere, suddenly he's vice president. And now suddenly he's the fucking president.
Yeah.
So now he's the president of the fucking Republican Party, and Nixon. This is just a massive trauma to the country. And I remember it. I remember Nixon, and Watergate was like a huge part of my youth. Now, when I grew up, when I was a kid, I lived in Mexico, and from when I know, like I'm aware that that's like not
Pennsylvania
cool.
crushes Mexico.
Yes.
You guys are dying to get to PA, dude.
Yes.
We occasionally go down there.
Yes.
And get sunburned.
That's right.
All right. So you're down in Mexico.
I'm in Mexico. And I moved. I was a baby when my parents moved to Mexico. My dad's Mexican. And then my parents, when I was about 7, moved to Boston, outside of Boston. And I remember coming to America. I remember my first memories were in Mexico in the 70s. So you think Mexico's bad now. In the 70s, it was like my mom only made carnation milk with powder because the milk was always rotten because there was no refrigeration, was just not good. It was a hot place. It was also beautiful. My memories are very beautiful from Mexico and still are. It's a wonderful country.
Yeah, of course.
Which is, and the thing is, they work really hard there. But their government is crazy corrupt and always has been. Like Mexico could be Japan with different organization. Like that's how hard they work and for how many hours. But so I lived in Mexico when I was a kid. And then we moved to America, and coming to America, which was like this shiny country full of cheerful people where all the floors are straight, like it's right angles, air conditioning, and just a cleanness and an honesty. And the idea that when they told me about like the president, like that it's a democracy, Mexico was a democracy, but everybody knew it was corrupt. And I got obsessed with the idea of the president of the United States. That's where it became a thing to me. And the president at the time was Nixon. And I cut a picture out of him out of the paper, and I taped it up next to
Nixon?
my bed. Yes, I loved Richard Nixon. When I was a little kid, I was so about Richard Nixon. And I wrote a letter to my abuelita, my grandmother.
Yeah.
And I sent her a picture of Nixon and said, "This is the president of the United States. He's the greatest man in the country.
He's so cool.
He's the best man." I didn't know a single thing about him. And he had this serious face. And I had a dream. It's the first dream I remember. I don't know if you remember dreams from when you were a kid at all. You ever had a dream that you still remember?
I'm not sure that I do.
So I remember one dream. I was in my bedroom was in the front of our house. So you looked out at the front of our house, and I was asleep, and it was like a Sunday morning. And I heard a band, like a marching band. And I looked outside, and it was Nixon, like walking up my street. Just no spectators.
Yeah.
Just him walking up, followed by a marching band. Boom, boom, ba-dum, bum. And I came out on the front yard. We had this walkway, and he got down on one knee, and he said, "Louis." And I ran into his arms.
What the fuck? Damn, you love Nixon.
I loved him so much.
Damn.
Isn't that crazy? I've never told anybody that.
How heartbroken were
I've
you?
never told anybody that in my life. And so,
Louis.
Louis.
Like, senor.
And it's funny. There's only
Presidente, senor.
the idea of his joy, because Nixon was such a miserable man that his joyful side was very rare. There's only one time I've ever seen it on film, and it's when he's playing piano. He's in a tuxedo, and I think he's at his daughter's wedding. And he was a concert pianist. He was very good. And he's playing piano, and he plays some big crescendo, and he's got this big dumb grin on his face. And I think maybe I had seen that, because that's that grin, every time I see it, I'm in that dream. So, but my parents saw that I had these pictures of him next to my bed, and they were like, "He's not a good
He's not
guy."
that great.
He's not, because Watergate was happening. And every night, my parents were sitting in front of the TV, this little fucking color TV, watching Watergate, watching the hearings. And it was like, shh.
And you're like, "How's it going?"
Yeah, I'm like,
how's my
boy going?
How's he doing?
Yeah. I'm like, fucking Ed Muskie, fuck you.
And they're like, "He's crying. He's on TV crying." You're like, "Shit."
Yeah, and then I remember watching live. There's the two things I remember that were like national events. I remember Walter Cronkite saying that America and Russia had just done something called Apollo-Soyuz. We had Apollo spacecraft going around, and they had Soyuz capsules. And one night they met, like they saw each other. It was an accident. And they thought, what if we could dock? So they went home and they started this project, Let's Dock. This is back in the 70s, in the middle of the Cold War. So they built a dock, and they had to do it together.
Yeah.
The Russian and the American space program. And then they went up in two separate rockets, found each other in the middle of space, and docked, and then drank vodka and shook hands and hung out.
Christ.
And Walter Cronkite told me on television, the only one up watching TV, and he said, if the Apollo-Soyuz capsules are flying over North America, and if it's clear where you are in the Northeast, if you look up, you might see them passing overhead. And I went outside and I laid on on the grass for hours, and he said it would be a red light and a white light blinking together. And
you
I
see it?
Saw it.
Oh man!
So that, and watching Nixon resign.
How pumped were you?
With the Apollo-Soyuz thing, I mean, still, it lives for me. And Nixon's resignation was just like a depressing, destroying, sad, fucked up thing. It was just like, what now? Like there was like an unbroken chain
Yeah.
from George Washington to him. Like if you go back, like LBJ notwithstanding, and everyone was proud of what he did with civil rights or whatever, there was an unbroken chain. Even if you're fucking Democrat, Republican, or Whig Democrat or whatever, Whig Republic, all of those, it was still the U.S. president. And then this guy fucking dropped the motherfucking ball. It's crazy. In disgrace, he left the office and left a mess of just like, this is all bullshit now. This is just all fucking crooked bullshit. What is the point? And the economy was tanking. And then here's Gerald Ford, who was just a kind of like oval-headed, simple dude. He made little moves. He handled it perfectly. I mean, he did one thing that was extremely unpopular and fucked up, which is that he pardoned Richard Nixon. It was the first thing he did. Everyone wanted to go after Nixon and keep investigating and catch him and send him to jail. He could have gone to prison for what he did. And Ford knew that if he pardoned him, he would never win an election. There was no way he was going to be reelected.
Yeah.
Because everyone would just say, well, you guys are just fucking dirty. You're just pardoning each other. Yeah. But he knew it was the right thing to do. We needed to get there. He said, our national nightmare needs to end. And he ended it. He dead-ended the investigations. He said, Nixon, and then there's this, I remember Steve Martin, who was the comedian then. He was my first favorite comedian. And Cosby really was. Cosby was first. As a kid, I listened to Cosby records constantly. But Steve Martin was the first person that made me think I could be a comedian because he was so weird. But he did a bit where during that time, because they show these footage of Nixon on the beach in California after he went home. And Steve Martin says, I feel bad for Nixon. He goes, I know you're not supposed to because he did wrong. But every time I see him on the beach with his big old shorts on and his metal detector, and he just a picture of Nixon just alone on the beach. And, Nixon stayed he did these interviews with David Frost, the Frost-Nixon interviews, and he opened up about himself a lot. And he stayed available to every president after him, would call on him. He was a great resource. Fascinating guy. And when Patricia died, he saw him at her funeral just crying his eyes out. Very human guy, Nixon. Very human. Showed his feelings. And he wasn't cool and he wasn't hip and he wasn't like, I feel your pain, Clinton. He just was an open sore. And I think he gave that. And I said that in the last time.
Yeah.
But so... Ford pardoned him, and then Squeaky Fromm tried to kill him. She shot at him. Did you know that a woman named Squeaky Fromm?
I've never. That's the first time I'm hearing this.
Squeaky Fromm was in the Manson family. Squeaky Fromm, the Manson family. You know who that is, right?
Yes.
Charles Manson. She was one of his Manson.
She was one of the ladies
for the the women who killed and men who killed. Roman Polanski's wife and unborn child. Squeaky Fromm found a way to get to him, and she took a shot at him with a rifle. And there was one guy, some cop, who hit the rifle away, saved his life, and that guy was gay. Just a piece of news.
Nice.
And I always combine that guy in my head to the guy on the plane, Flight 93. It was a gay rugby player. It was one of the guys who said,
Let's Roll guys?
Let's roll. Yeah.